And we are live. Welcome, mystery and thriller fans. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I'm so excited to welcome tonight the incredible New York Times best-selling author, Deanna Raybourn, here to give us the inside scoop on her brand new red-hot book, Killers of a Certain Age. Deanna, welcome to Mystery and Thriller Mavens. Tell us about these killers.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here and very excited to chat all things killers. This book follows what happens with four female assassins who are 60 years old and about ready to retire, but they have to band together to take out the organization they work for when they realize that organization would rather see them dead than let them retire.
Well, I am here for every tasty, delicious, laugh out loud bit of it. And I can't wait to get into every dirty detail. But first, I just want to welcome everyone who is watching with us on Facebook, on YouTube. No matter where you're watching from, you're in the right place. This is the right time. It is Mystery Monday. And because Mondays can be killer, we're going to make it a little less painful. If you've been here before, you know the drill. And if you're new, welcome. We're so happy to have you. Here's the drill. This is your chance to ask this incredible New York Times bestselling author anything you want about Killers of a Certain Age, about her research process, about these assassins, about anything that's weighing on your mind. Just get them going in the comments and we will get them right over to Deanna. George, welcome to the conversation. Love your profile picture there. I'm seeing some great Danes. I love Danes.
Love it. We got some virtual dogs. You know, that's not that I stalk other people's dogs on Instagram, so this is very exciting to me. To have a virtual dog show up. Love it.
Yay. And George had messaged earlier that he wasn't able to go to your in-store event. So we're very happy to have you tonight with us, live from Texas, George. Susan, welcome to the conversation. Great to see you here. She said, I love your books, Deanna.
Oh,
yay.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And Susan, tell us what you love about Deanna's books. I know I love that sense of humor, those razor sharp insights. Tell us what you love about it. Well, I want to get over to share some of the incredible words of praise that this instant New York Times bestseller has earned. So first, let's kick off with this rave review from the Washington Post, which calls this a singular suspense story. I'm going to pop it up here on the screen so we can all read along. A singular suspense story thanks to its deftly fluctuating tone, which is by turns comical, violent, and unexpectedly affecting. It's impossible not to root for these dangerous dames and their refusal to let themselves be put on the ash heap, a phrase that in this thriller should be taken literally. Amazing review here in the Washington Post, which also we saw in the Houston Chronicle this week. Amazing. Who gave us a shout out for the event tonight. So thanks to the Chronicle. Deanna, let's talk about this praise. So I know I have laughed out loud, literally many times during reading this book. What do you think the secret is to being funny on the page? Because actually it's hard to be funny.
It's not something that I deliberately set out to do. It's just that I cannot imagine spending months because by the time, when you start a book and then you write it and then you have to revise it and then you have to proofread it and it goes through cut. I mean, there's so much that you put into the book and so much time that you spend with the characters. I cannot imagine having to do this when everything is grim or everything is dark. And some writers, that's how they work out all of their, whatever angst they've got going on. For me, it would be incredibly depressing to spend those months with characters who are just in these grim, dark situations and there's no levity to it at all. So for me, it was just important that if I was going to be writing about something as serious as assassination, then, make it fun,
Yeah.
Murder, but make it fun.
Murder or make it fun. Hashtag blessed. The theme of this retirement cruise turned deadly. That was one of the things that made me laugh out loud, because you're also taking a searing look at social media and social media culture, and this hashtag culture that we all live in. So it's so good to know that the humor is a coping mechanism for you as well. So how long does it take you? I've been dying to know. How long does it take you to write this soup to nuts, A to Z? How long does a book take you?
Most books, about 9 months would be par for me. That's my comfort zone. I 1 book a year is not quite enough. 2 books a year is too much. This book actually took longer because I had to fit in my Veronica Speedwell, which is my historical mystery series. I had to fit in those books around it because I already had books under contract that I was committed to doing, but also because it took a while for me to find my contemporary writing voice. I never had one before because I've never written contemporary. And so that for me was the biggest struggle, was figuring out, what does my contemporary voice sound like?
Oh, interesting. So, as a person who also, as a reader who also really enjoys historical, I am such a historical nerd. What was the most challenging part for you? Was it not having to do the research? Was it the, just using more modern terms? Like, what was the challenge for you?
It was figuring out what voice sounded authentic, what the voices should sound like, because my historical voice is second nature to me. I can slip into that, and it is just as comfortable as a bubble bath. There's no struggle. It's easy, it's right there, it's accessible anytime I start writing a Veronica Speedwell novel or anything else that's historical. But having to do contemporary characters, that was a completely different situation. And so, and it was one that I was really, really excited to tackle, but I knew it was going to be hard. And I went through just struggles trying to find that voice, and, trying to write my way into it. And I remember one scene in particular, oh God, I probably tried it 3 or 4 times and every time it was like, no, this is crap. This isn't working. And finally I sat down one day and I stopped trying to write the scene, and I just tried to tell the scene, and finished it up and handed it off to my husband, which he doesn't usually read things before they get turned in. But I said, I have no objectivity. I have no distance from this anymore. I can't tell if it's awesome. I can't tell if it's just more crap to put on the pile of crap that I've already written. Help me out. And so he read it and he started laughing and he said, babe, this is your Twitter feed. And I went, oh, nailed it. That's my contemporary voice, is my Twitter feed. It's how it's me. It's just authentically how I speak and how I express myself. And I went, that's who I am. And it really was, the key to it was no longer trying to write the story, but just telling the story.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Susan is sharing, she says that she said the historical language is totally different than contemporary. She also loves your historical, and she'd like to know, what took you away from writing historical books? What made you want to write this contemporary voice?
Well, I mean, to be absolutely clear, nothing has taken me away from historical. I just turned in Veronica Speedwell 8. I'm getting ready to start writing Veronica Speedwell 9. There's more to come. I am still very much a historical writer. I really wanted the challenge of writing contemporary because I have only ever written one contemporary novel, and it too is crap. It lives in a box in my attic. It's terrible. It's not going to see the light of day ever. But I wanted the challenge of being able to do this and to try to do it well, and to try to find that contemporary voice and get through constructing a contemporary plot, because a contemporary plot by definition has to be different from a historical plot, largely because there are so many things that my Victorian characters could solve if they had access to cell phones, but they don't. So, the plot of necessity is very different in a contemporary. You have to deal with all of these changes in how people move through the world, how they relate to each other, and just kind of the domino effect that technology will have. Because one simple, like, I have friends who wrote romantic suspense novels in the 80s and 90s, and they cannot revise them. They can't put them back out there because the plot literally would be over with in 2 seconds if you had a cell phone. And so they're hamstrung.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just a completely different way of coming at writing. And to me, it was such a huge challenge that I really, really wanted the opportunity to see what I could do with it.
I love that. I love that because it's not just about the fact that, now we have cars and cell phones and internet and technology and street cameras and DNA and fingerprint technology.
Exactly.
But it's also the way that we viewed women, the way that we viewed mysteries. I mean, there's just that is a fascinating take on what that challenge has been like for you. Licha, welcome to the conversation. So glad to have you. Susan saying she also loves all of your research and historical themes in your Veronica books. Fantastic. Yeah, I'm
Thank
a
you.
huge fan as well. So let's chat more about this one. Susan says I'm excited to read it, and I hope it's not one of those Colleen Hoover Virginia Trice books. Oh, I can assure you it is not. My favorite review about this book was Buzzfeed, who said this is James Bond meets the Golden Girls, and it has this razor edge, whip smart, funny, and just the views of women and aging and how powerful these women are, but how they use cultural norms like being invisible after a certain age to get to their own advantage. It is absolutely fantastic. There's no surprise here why this is an instant New York Times bestseller, and everyone is literally raving about it. Pop Sugar saying it is both sharp and witty. Jocelyn Jackson, New York Times bestselling author, most recently of Mother May I. Let's pull her up, and she says this. Let me get it right here. Saying this is you are a national treasure who never fails to signature dry wit, sophisticated storylines, slick twists, and smart eccentric women who anchor your books. This latest is a romping, wild delight from start to finish. So let's pause on that. So as you were writing this contemporary book, did you find that the process was different? Are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? How did you get in there, Deanna?
I'm an organized pantser, or a very disorganized plotter. One of the two. I haven't figured out which it is. I will know when I start a book. I will know A, and I will know L, and I will know Q, and I will know Z, but I don't know all the rest of the points in between. I know where we start. I know where we end. I know a few of the little points in between, but I don't know exactly how we're going to navigate all of those little journeys from point to point. And that to me is part of the pleasure of writing is kind of making those serendipitous little connections. And always things are cooking away in my subconscious. And sometimes my brain will pop up with something that I didn't expect. I'll realize I've laid in a clue somewhere that proves to be useful later on, which is always nice when when your imagination kind of does you this subconscious favor, and you can go back and say, well, thank you for that. But yeah, so I know where I'm starting and I know where I'm ending, and I have a very rough idea of how I'm going to get there.
I love that. So in this book, can you share anything that was one of those plot points that took you by surprise without ruining any spoilers? What was one thing that surprised you?
I think probably just the way that I was able to incorporate as many different settings as I did. I loved being able to use places that I have been, because I've been to all of the settings in the book with the exception of one. And it's not the one you're thinking. I have been to the grossest setting that's in the book. And it is grosser than I describe in the book. And you may not be there yet since you're only halfway through. But we'll see. And that was a kind of this, again, serendipity to be able to use these places that I've been and just kind of weave them into the story was great fun.
That is great fun. So would you say of these 4 kick-ass heroines, which one are they? All a little bit of you? Are you more of a Nat? Are you more of a Helen? I feel like, remember Sex and the City? It was like, are you a Carrie? Are you a Miranda?
Yeah.
Are you a Nat? Are you a Billy? Are you a Helen? Who are you?
I am definitely, I am more of a Billy than anything. Because we see from the very, very beginning the book opens with a flashback to their first mission, where things go horribly awry, and they have to suddenly figure out, how are we going to be these kick-ass international assassins when we've screwed up job one?
Right.
And so it's a matter of you suddenly see each of these 4 women for who they are. Their characters are broken down in this opening chapter. And this is basically who they are for the next 40 years, because a lot of times your essential personality at 20 doesn't change that much. Life experiences will influence you, and you will certainly be shaped by what you go through. but there is a core part of your personality that generally stays the same. And, which is part of the reason why they're able to push each other's buttons so well, is because of the fact that, they know each other on this visceral level. But Billy is the one who kind of steps into a leadership role when she doesn't really want to. She would, prefer just to kick back and take it easy and not have to deal with that. And that's definitely me.
I have to say that opening scene gave me chills because I can deal with almost anything, but not violence to animals. So when there's a scene, so in this first scene, there's a scene with the dog, and I was like, if something happens to the dog, I'm gonna jump out of this.
You are totally safe with me. I will never hurt the animals. I promise you that. We are good to go. I have not even watched John Wick yet because I know that the dog dies, and I'm like, I'm not okay.
Oh my God, I cannot watch it. It's like kill a person, but
I know, and it's Keanu. Like, I mean, I was an 80s teen. This is Keanu. This is must watch. And yet yeah.
I have my co-broadcaster is asleep at my feet, so I'm a huge dog person. I was like, I would be the one who would put the dog in my parachute, a backpack, and I would like, I'll risk my own life, but the dog's got to stay.
The dog is going to be saved. Absolutely,
the dog must be saved. George saying Veronica is such a hoot. Holmes had his pipe. Columbo his trench coat. Veronica her net. I love your historical and spent hours looking up the butterflies and the locations. Very cool, George. Thank you so much for letting us know. So Deanna, what was your research process into female assassins? A subject I know very little about.
There's very little to know. When you start researching female assassins in history, first of all, if you try to separate it out from female spies and you go with just assassins, I mean, the research is thin on the ground. There's not very much besides Charlotte Corday in the French Revolution, stabbing Marat in the bathtub. There's just not that much to go on. And then, in modern times, most of the women who have committed kind of enormously public crimes, attempted assassinations, have generally been under the influence of somebody who was wanting them to carry this out. These are not actions that they were undertaking because they wanted necessarily to do them. It was because they were somebody else's puppet, or they bought into somebody else's ideology. It's not that they were running the show. And so if you're looking for women who are very self-determined, who have this goal for themselves and have a master plan, there's not much. You end up going back to like Roman empresses and kind of looking at them because there's not much in the, and of course, the caveat with that is the most successful assassins are the ones that you don't even realize are assassinating people, of course. So, it's not like there's some huge database that you have access to when you're doing this research and you can say, that's classified. So there's a lot of information that I would have loved to have gotten my hands on that was not going to happen. So I had to make a lot up.
Right, exactly. Because I posted one male assassin on here, turned writer, and I posted a bunch of CIA, both analysts and agents, some women, but I've never hosted a female assassin. So I thought one of my favorite scenes is when you see a flashback when Billy is getting recruited for the museum, which is the super secret organization that they work for. And I love seeing how they sort of identify a rabble rouser, a renegade, someone who cares about justice, who differentiates. Billy differentiates between justice and legalities. That resonated with me. Tell us about that scene, the genesis of that scene.
Oh, that is one of my favorite scenes in the book, and it had a couple of different versions before I finally got to this one. But the core of it was always the same. That conversation that she has with the recruiter was always basically the same. The last time I went through and wrote it, where I really feel like, okay, I finally got it where I wanted, was where Billy is when they find her. That I added at the last time I wrote the scene. And then the book that Billy has with her. when she's recruited is something I added in as an homage because of the fact that I love those books and I love the main character in them, and I wanted to kind of give a little wink and a nod to other people who might also share my affection for that character.
Right here. That was one of my favorite scenes, and I loved how her handler, that was what he sort of resonated with him, and he's seeing her annotations, and he's like, this person is smart, but she's willing to color outside the lines, and I aspire to be a Billy. So this is very cool. That was also one of my favorite scenes, so it's so cool to know that was also one of yours. Yeah. Heather Graham, New York Times bestselling author of Crimson Summer, also chiming in with a rave. Let's pop up this one as well, saying Killers of a Certain Age captures the reader from the get-go and never lets go. An excellent and thrilling read. So, Deanna, this is not your first rodeo. What have you learned over the course of your career on how you keep those pages turning? How do you do it? Book after book, what have you learned? What's the secret?
For me, it's always about characters that I love spending time with. Ooh. And always setting myself a challenging puzzle to figure out, how am I going to get them out of this situation? And trying to come up with something that's going to keep the reader engaged. And if I ever have, kind of a dilemma as far as how I go with a scene, I always choose what's going to be the most fun to write. Because whatever's the most fun to write is the most fun to read. So
that is a fascinating way.
You're making me, I've just rocked your world face.
Yes, because I never thought about what would be fun for me to write. What would be fun? Oh, that's such an, I'm going to have to take, this is going to take a minute to filter into my brain. I love that. While I'm filtering, I'll get over to Joyce joining us from YouTube. Hey, Joyce, great to see you. Saying, I am a huge Veronica Speedwell fan, and I have all the series in audio. I just now purchased this new one, and I can't wait to listen to it. So let's
wonderful.
Yay. Thanks for tuning in, Joyce. Let us know if you have any questions. So, Deanna, one question we always get is, do you get to be involved with the voice, the casting of the voice? Tell us about that.
For Killers of a Certain Age, absolutely. They sent me audio files, samples of a whole bunch of different narrators, and I sat down and listened to them all, and had a back and forth with the producer, and we ended up deciding on one narrator to read the sections of the book that are voiced by Billy, and then a different narrator to do the flashback scenes that are third person. Because we have a series of flashback scenes in the book that kind of set up earlier missions and how these four are recruited and all of that good stuff. And so we wanted there to be a difference, kind of a distinctive difference in those two voices. And so, and I came back and said, well, these are the two narrators I like. And she was like, great, those are the two I love too. So we're good to go. And luckily they were both available. And so we were very, very fortunate to get a couple of great narrators working on this book.
So it was a clear winner for you. You're like, that's my voice.
Absolutely.
Very
Absolutely.
Cool. Oh, and it's interesting too that your editor was on the same page. Like you're both hearing it internally. Because I know sometimes I'm a really visual person, so I always picture, oh, I think I'd have Helen Mirren in this role, or I'm mentally casting it because
of course
I take my job seriously, and sometimes I'll be chatting with other readers and they'll be like, that isn't my Helen at all. And I'm like, how could it not? It's just, so it's interesting that you both had the same audio idea in your head.
Yeah, it was one of those lovely, lovely things where, everybody was just kind of congruent with each other. And, we got to both just be very happy with our choices, and we both got our first pick.
Yay, I love knowing that backstory. Well, I want to remind y'all, the book just came out and was an instant New York Times bestseller. Congratulations on that, Deanna.
Thank you.
You can get your copy of the book from our favorite woman-owned independent bookstore tonight. So I'm going to pop the link up here. So order your copy now so that you too can immerse yourself in the world of these 4 fabulous female assassins. Here is the link. So click and order it, and let us know which one you are. Are you a Billy? Are you a Helen? Are you a Nat? We don't know. So we'll continue the conversation as we always do over in Mystery and Thriller Maven. So grab your copy, y'all. You're going to love it. Pop Sugar deemed this a sharp and witty thriller. Buzzfeed calling it James Bond meets the Golden Girls, which I think is maybe my favorite. Did you have a favorite review, Deanna, where you're like, at last I am seen?
No, because I don't actually read reviews. So everything that you're saying tonight, I have never heard.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Yeah, I don't read them. I know that of the trade reviews, the things that come out that booksellers read and librarians read, 4 of those reviews in different publications were starred, which is amazing and wonderful. And they will tell me, oh, hey, we got a review in the Washington Post and it's great. But as far as what the review is, no. They will send that to my agent, and so the PR department and my agent, and they will all have a party together in the emails, and I know nothing about it.
Was that a choice that you made, on book 1, where you're like, this is too stressful, I can't do it? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I don't ever read reviews. It's not, I feel like other people's opinions of me are none of my business. So I just, because by the time the review comes out, the reviews are not written for us anyway. They're not written for the writers. They're written for readers. And, if I pay too much attention to what a review is, then that's just going to get in my head. And the thing is, reviews are very much idiosyncratic. They're very subjective. They belong to the person who wrote them and to their viewpoint, and they're perfectly valid. But not everybody is going to agree with each other on them. And, I remember even early on when my first book came out, I got an email from one reader who said, oh, I love this book. And I love those little epigraphs that you put at the start of each chapter, the little verses, because I would pull a Shakespearean quote at the start of each chapter. And then the very next email I got was, I love this book, but I hate those epigraphs. Never put them in. And I thought, okay, then how are you ever supposed to make, you can't make everybody happy. There's no way. So what you have to do is worry about making yourself happy, turning in the absolute best book that you possibly could, and just, hoping that it will find its readership, and go from there. And readers are the ones who read those reviews, and that is for them. That is their conversation, and I don't need to be a part of that.
Oh, I love that, Deanna, because because it's really hard not to. It's funny, because some 2 particularly tough reviews for my first book still stick with me 10 years later, and the nice ones are somehow easier to forget. But
of course, criticism is always going to stick with you more than compliments. Unfortunately, it's the way we're hardwired. And I'm hugely appreciative when people review the books. But as I said, that's not a conversation that I really should be a part of. I've seen a lot of really bad author behavior that starts with a review that for some reason struck a nerve and made someone feel bad. And the thing is too, you can have a bad review that is 100% legitimate. You can have a bad review that is a reviewer having a bad day. And of course you tend to have more of those if it's someone who's expressing an opinion about a book that they bought, as opposed to a trade reviewer. But those conversations, they're conducted in spaces where they are for readers and not for writers. That's not a space where I feel like we need to be intruding. At least I'm not going to intrude in that space and try to take up room when people are trying to talk about my books. That's their privilege. If they've taken the time to read it, then they have every right to discuss it and form their opinions and exchange those opinions. And they don't need me putting my fingerprints in there.
Well, I love that perspective, and I think that is probably a really good regimen for mental health, because
it absolutely is.
So I am taking notes.
I got you, girl. I got you.
I love it. Y'all, I just want to remind you, the book is freshly out and already a New York Times bestseller, an instant bestseller, which is so freaking amazing. I'm just so happy.
I know, I am over the moon. I am absolutely over the moon about that.
So order now, y'all. Once again, here is that link, and you too can immerse yourself in the fabulous world of these 4 fabulous kick-ass women. So no matter where you're watching from tonight, here's the link. Click and order it. I think we have time for 1, maybe 2 questions. George would like to know, what was your recipe in the Mystery Writers of America cookbook?
Oh gosh. So my very first series was the Julia Gray series. And Julia Gray was a character who had this really enormous, very eccentric family. And one of their holiday traditions was a really lethal wassail punch. And so that was the recipe that I put in the Mystery Writers of America cookbook, was for this wassail punch, which is highly, highly intoxicating. So, approach with caution.
Is that a family recipe of yours, Deanna?
No, it's not. But maybe it should be. Like, maybe we should adopt it. Now I'm thinking maybe we should brew up a batch this year.
I feel like you should. I mean, I feel like I need to go. I didn't know, George. You're clearly a super fan, because I did not know that. I just want to take one more question. This one was submitted in advance. So I wanted to make sure to get over to Anne, who wanted to know, what's your best advice for an aspiring young author?
I think probably the most helpful thing that I can tell someone who aspires to be published is, don't worry quite so much about what people who are already published think, because you know more than they do about writing your book. I know how to write my books, but I don't know how to write your books. You're the expert on that. And, many, many moons ago, Dr. Spock was like the childcare expert. And I want to say that his book started out, trust yourself, you know more than you think you do. It was something like that. It's the same for writers. Trust yourself. You know more than you think you do.
I love that. I love that, because I think that so much of this industry can give authors, and especially those starting out, the feeling that you're lucky to even have a seat at this table. You would be lucky to even get a crumb at the seat at this table. And if you don't want this crumb, there's 5,000 people behind you who would stab you and step over a crumpled body for that crumb. And there's so much to disempower a young writer, that I love the idea of putting that power back in her hands and saying that, actually, this. What a fabulous, fabulous piece of advice. And of empowerment. With that, y'all, we are out of time. So I want to thank you, Deanna Raybourn, for coming in and giving us the inside scoop on Killers of a Certain Age. Y'all, thank you for joining us here for another fabulous Mystery Monday. George saying thank you so much. This was so much fun. Great discussion, George. Always a pleasure to see your name pop up, sir. And I'll be back at the top of the hour with Kate Nunn, live from Australia. Y'all have a great night. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you so much.